Happy Monday. Hope everyone had a great holiday weekend. I'm making this video because it's kind of an extension to the last video I made about watch out what you listen for when it comes to gold, why it had that big dip. Look at the real facts behind the move, not the hype, if you will. And Turkey is in trouble. Turkey sold 60 tons of its gold, real gold. If you remember my last video, if you didn't, I talked about no investor is selling their gold. And that is true. No individual investors. I know people I talk to, and I talk to several hundred people a month, over 150 a month, and just in prospects, not just my clients. And nobody wants to sell their gold, at least people I've talked to. And I've been doing this myself personally since 2010. But Turkey did, in fact, sell its gold. But before you start screaming, oh my God, what's that mean? What's that mean for the gold I bought? It actually, in my opinion, should solidify why you should own physical precious metals. But it is a big deal, but not as big of a deal as you might think. And I'll go over those details in a second. If you have not seen or heard about my company, I'm thecompleteinvestor.net, the complete investor at thecompleteinvestor.net. We specialize in helping people protect their retirement accounts with real physical precious metals, real gold, real silver. Most people don't know you can actually own real gold in your retirement account. It's a tax-free, penalty-free move. You lose no value. You're just moved from paper to physical assets. And after this video, if you don't already own physical precious metals, you might want to look into it seriously. Also, if you do want to buy with direct, I get a lot of clients that would just say, hey, I don't have a retirement account, or I just want to own the gold myself in my hands. I want to use cash I have on hand and buy physical precious metals. Nobody delivers gold. Nobody I know of delivers gold faster, safer, more effectively than our company. Gold in your hands in 1 to 2 days, gold or silver. I still hear companies out there quoting several weeks to get you precious metals. We are delivering faster than probably anybody else that I know of, again, in your hands in 1 to 2 days. Now, here's the big headline, and I talked again about this. Don't hear the shocking headlines from people that are not in the business or trying to sell you something. Just make sure that you get the real facts. Right, gold had the big dip a couple weeks ago, has bounced significantly, and I went over the technical levels of why that's a good thing, right? Real good support at that $4,300 level, big bounce. But also some people were out there saying, that investors were selling their metals. No, true investors, people that are actually taking physical possession of their metals are not. But Turkey ended up selling 60 tons of their gold. Now, there's a reason why they did this. I want to put that in a perspective for you, and then this should actually make you either A, be happy you're in gold, or B, want you to get into gold, in my opinion. So the big sell-off happened because the Turkish lira is in a free fall. Okay, I'm going to come back to this in a second. And they sold off, and you can look this up, 60 tons. Now, when I was making my video, this information was still being kind of like, is it really happening? There were some unqualified sources, news sources saying they thought this was happening. I heard one guy say it was Saudi Arabia. So it now is official. It was Turkey. Now, for perspective, Turkey owns about 600 tons of gold. They sold, and they didn't really sell, I'll go over that detail here in a second, but they sold 60 tons of it. So 10% of their holdings, they still have 90% of their holdings. They are a big buyer on the world scale, I'm sorry. But just so everyone calms down, it's less than a 0.25% of the total world's value of real physical gold. So it's a fraction of a fraction of the total value. But it did kind of push the big, companies, investment firms, big, players in the market to sell futures on gold, right? Because it is scary, right? What's happening in the Middle East is really hurting a lot of countries. But the reason why it's really hurting Turkey and what's causing this to push Turkey to sell their precious metals is they don't have any. Their currency is in free fall and has been. I'm just going to go to the 1 year chart here. I mean, it is just on a free fall. And the biggest reason why they're in a different situation than a lot of other countries is because they have been lowering their interest rates into inflation. Something, by the way, the U.S. wants to do. So their currency is getting debased faster and more aggressively than almost probably any other country in the world right now. They're getting so far removed from the value of real money and the paper money they're producing because they are just producing tons of currency, issuing tons of notes without having the income or the assets to support it. And with the additional, crisis going on in the Middle East, it is forcing them to take drastic measures, sell real assets, sell their gold. And what they did was they sold about, I think I read about 8 to 10 tons of gold, and they bought it in U.S. dollars. Why? Because the U.S. dollar is strong right now, right? We're paying a huge return for our bonds. In a global scale, we look the safest place to be, right? While the Middle East and Far Eastern countries are really hurting because of the conflict in Iran. That is forcing them to sell their gold. They sold about 8 tons. They sold it to in U.S. dollars, and then they used those dollars to buy their currency. And by the way, it had a little bit of effect. This is the last 5 days, or let me go back to the month. It did give them a little bit of pop, but it is not helping overall. So they immediately said, okay, we will promise to sell, all right, it's called credit swap, the additional 52 tons of gold. But it's like pawning. The term credit swap is, they said, they went to, I think it was JP Morgan Chase and HSBC, and said, here, I'll let you guys hold it. I plan on buying it back, but give me some credit. Now, the term is like pawning your gold. They basically went to a pawn shop, as HSBC and JP Morgan Chase, and said, hey, I plan on buying it back, but can you give me some credit right now, right? What should make you feel great about owning precious metals, in my opinion, is they were able to liquidate that gold instantaneously. 60 tons of gold was liquidated and absorbed by the market. Now, there was a big shock with futures traders, right? And then the margin calls that came along with that, right? That dropped gold's price overall. But again, this is just a knee-jerk reaction to what I feel is a systemic problem globally of people's currencies, countries' currencies, fiat currencies getting further and further away from the real value of money because they just don't have the income to support the amount of dollar bills, or in this case, liras, that are being thrown around, right, and being issued every day. And it's not working. Selling their gold is not working, which actually over time will make gold more valuable. Because when they have to finally say our money's worthless, the only thing they'll have real value in is actual gold. And proof is right now, the only actual value they have is real gold. That's why they had to sell it to get money and trade it in for U.S. dollars so they could get that currency exchange rate, right? The U.S. dollar is trading for way more value than the lira, and then leverage that exchange rate to buy their lira and prop it up. But again, it's not working. Now, why do I feel that should really make you feel good about gold? Because they're not selling any other investment. No other investment is recognized globally for that country other than gold. And not only did that shock initially draw down futures and test some levels, that $4,300 level, and we bounced real hard off of it, right? Now we're up over, I think, $4,700 as I make this recording. But when these currencies start failing across the world, this is only one of many countries this will happen to if it's happening to Turkey. These countries are going to have to recognize the only value which is really gold and real estate, right? Some countries have valuable real estate. They'll have to leverage that. But at the end of the day, this shock, right, did affect gold futures. It didn't affect the value and what people are holding in real gold, because if it did, my clients would be calling me trying to sell their gold, and none have. Not one customer of mine has called me to sell their gold. And even prospective clients that have gold, I say, hey, you want to sell your gold? Not one person, hey, I want to sell my gold. The only thing I've been doing in the last couple of weeks is selling people more gold, because this is the first pullback of any value in the last 15 years of this size, right? So in my video, and the reason why I'm making this video, in my last video, I talked about, hey, nobody's selling real gold. It's gold futures. With this coming to light, yes, real gold owners, country, not individual investors, Turkey did have to sell some gold. They'll probably have to sell more, just so you know. Probably a lot more. But it is only 10% of their gold they sold. It wasn't a majority. And they plan on buying it back, because they did a swap, or you know, in layman's terms, they did a pawn of their gold. They plan on getting that back and buying it back. And that they've actually, you can look this up, they've got news articles that say that, hey, they plan on buying it back. That's why they did a swap instead of an actual outright sell. They did outright sell, I think, 8 tons of gold. But the other 52 tons that they committed, they do plan on buying back. And on a global scale, that's less than 1/4% of the total gold. So a lot of hype. You're probably going to see a lot of videos done on this. Oh my God, Turkey just sold 60 tons of gold, which sounds like a lot, and it is. Don't get me wrong. But you got to put that in perspective and understand the true dynamics and you know, fundamentals that are going on behind the scenes. Again, to me, this only validates that you should be in gold, because it's truly the only thing recognized as real value in terms of money, right? So keep that in mind. I personally believe that only makes me want to get more gold, especially if we have a pullback of any size, because this is going to continue to happen. These countries, Turkey's not the only one, is running out of money and running out of assets to validate that money. So they got to sell the only thing that is globally recognized, gold. So if you have any questions, feel free to click on the link below. You can obviously get on my calendar. You can go to my main website, thecompleteinvestor.net. Go to my homepage. At the bottom here is a form you can fill out, have a conversation with me about your personal situation. But again, I wanted to qualify kind of the news, because you're probably going to be hearing it now, because it has been validated and big news channels are covering this story. I think some people out there have already misquoted, saying, you know, that it's a much bigger value of their, you know, Turkey's total gold stores, which it's not. It's 10% of their gold stores. Some people said that it's, you know, a larger percentage of the global value of gold out there. It's less than 1/4%. And then last but not least, I heard people saying it was Saudi Arabia. No, it was Turkey. Maybe Saudi Arabia might do it, but they're a really rich country, so I don't know if they'll have to do that. But keep in mind, there's going to be more countries doing this. It's going to get nasty out there, in my opinion, if Turkey's getting this bad. And again, they just did this, and it did nothing to their currency. They had a little blip up right here, right? And then it's just free falling and continue to free fall. Let's look at today's date. We got a little bounce off of here, but the last 5 days, you can tell it's just in a free fall, this currency. So be safe out there. Stay in gold. If you're not in gold, in my opinion, get into gold. Thank you so much.